Hello, and welcome to the Startups of London podcast. I'm your host, Ozan, and the founder of Startups of London. Today, I'm joined by Mahdi Yahya, founder of Ori. Ori.co, based on my basic research, is a cloud solution that sits between your application portfolio and your distributed infrastructure. But I think we need Mahdi to tell us more about what the solution is. So yeah, welcome to our chat.
Thank you, Ozan. Happy to be here.
So let's start about what the product is, who your ideal customer is, and what's the solution that you offer to them, so we get a better understanding of the business model, and then we can get into the other details.
Absolutely. So we're a distributed cloud platform, basically, and we work with large enterprises that are on their cloud transformation journey. So our customers are banks, manufacturers, and retailers. And most of these enterprises basically manage distributed infrastructure. So they manage infrastructure in multiple public clouds in their own data centers, sometimes in branches and offices and so forth. And obviously managing all of this infrastructure is extremely complex, and then running applications. And some of these enterprises run in the thousands of applications in order to run their business. Running these applications is a very expensive and complex process, especially as they start moving more and more towards a cloud-native architecture. So we basically offer them a platform which is distributed cloud, Ori Global Cloud, and allows them to manage their infrastructure, orchestrate their applications, and monitor that and manage the lifecycle of that moving forward in a very simple and easy way. So what used to take 8 to 12 months of preparation and deployment, with us it could take a day, basically.
Amazing. So basically, you're a B2B oriented solution. Is that fair to say? Is it just B2B?
Absolutely, yeah. So we only work with businesses and we only work with enterprises.
Amazing. And if you could kind of walk us through what you mean by those applications, so people have a better understanding. Because the reason I'm asking this is, as entrepreneurs, it's really important to diagnose a problem. And then once you find a problem, once you know there is a demand, you can actually create a solution around and you can solve problems. But you cannot solve the problem of lack of demand, right? So you need to start with the position of, okay, this is the market, there's an opportunity here, there's a demand here. So for us to understand that, can you perhaps give us an example? What are these applications? What is a client, without giving any names if you don't prefer, and how it works with your case?
Sure. Before I get to that, I think I kind of disagree a bit with, I guess it depends on what you're building, because sometimes you might find a better way of doing something that not necessarily people have identified it as a problem. And then you build a technology that improves on something that others have not identified. So you kind of creating a solution for a problem that maybe you only see, or maybe a problem that is going to exist later on. So I don't think it's as black and white as that. There's a lot of ups and downs, I would say, in building a company and actually exploring the problem space that you are building with. And as you know, a lot of startups or companies start with a certain problem and then realize that it's not actually the real problem that they're building against, and that changes over time. So I wouldn't say it's as linear as that. It's very much it's a chaotic process.
It definitely is. It definitely is. No disagreements there.
Yeah. So on the applications, I mean, large enterprises use, you're talking about like as simple applications as their accounting software, as their HR software, all the way up to how they manage the databases, some open source software that they use to manage, database infrastructure and so forth. And these applications are in the hundreds, sometimes in the thousands, in some of the large financial services institutions that we talk to. And they could be front-end applications or front office applications, so applications that their employees use, like in a bank, for example, the software that the employees in a branch use to input the customer data and so forth. That's an application. And behind that, there are numbers of applications that power this application as well. So it's a chain of complex applications for them to actually run their business operation in general, basically. And historically, most large enterprises, especially the ones in the financial service space, have basically built their own on-premise clouds, their own private clouds, or even their own on-premise data centers. And a lot of these applications are built in a way to run on this infrastructure. And with the move to microservices architectures and with the move to cloud native applications, a lot of this is changing. So either the supplier of the applications are changing how they're building their applications, is becoming more cloud native, or the bank is starting to adopt more a cloud native architecture for a variety of different reasons, for compliance, to compete as well, because a lot of the challenger financial services or the challenger fintechs are in the cloud, so they basically can compete more than traditional ones, and for cost purposes as well. So with all of this move, this comes with a lot of complexity, and we come in with a solution to all of these different enterprises and say, you really don't need to deal with this complexity. We abstract it away from you because we automated a lot of the manual process that you have to do to become cloud native and to manage your applications, basically.
Got it. So how did you come into this problem? Did you have a background in a company that's within your target market, for example? So how did you stumble upon this to start with?
I've been in infrastructure and cloud infrastructure specifically for about 15 years. So my first company that I started was a wholesale network. And basically I spent a long time in data centers, in networking between infrastructure and working on enterprise grade infrastructure.
So hold on for a second. Have you been working as an entrepreneur for the last 15 years in that case?
Yes.
Amazing.
So I started my first company 15 years ago. I was 20 years old. And I grew that to about $200 million per year in revenues, and I learned everything about infrastructure and how global data centers work and how basically the backstage of the internet.
Well done, mate. That's quite something.
And so I experienced firsthand the rise of the cloud and how cloud computing changed how we deal with infrastructure and how basically applications in general started changing their architectures and to adopt the cloud and so forth. A few years ago, I came across a number whereby you realize that only 3% of global IT workloads are in the cloud still. So there's 97% of global IT workloads are not in the cloud yet. That means there's a huge growth potential for the cloud itself, and the cloud is big now. We know it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right?
It's like a giant tsunami wave.
Absolutely. And then if you look at where these workloads are, they're mainly in large enterprises. And then I looked at this spend, and last year, enterprises globally spent about $4 trillion on managing IT infrastructure that is outside of the cloud. With the growth of the cloud and this spend starting to move to the cloud, this is where I saw an opportunity to basically build a platform that would capture both, solve the problem for the enterprises and capture that spend that is only going to grow from here, basically.
So tell us about the building part. What was your personal role? So looking at it from the perspective of a founder, everybody has different assets. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all recipe, I'm afraid, for the entrepreneurs listening to us. But in your case, after you've made that decision, seen the opportunity, done your research, how did you start building this? What components of it were done by yourself? How did you go about building the team, the investment? Tell us all about it.
Oh, well, it's that's a long process, I would say. So
let's talk about the first year. What was your focus in the first? How long has it been since you launched Ori?
So we've been building this company for about 3.5 years now, basically. So 3.5 years old.
Amazing. So let's talk us through the first year. How did you start? Because I think that's the most difficult part is to get started with these things and put them on the right track. And
yeah, absolutely. So some of the team that started with Ori were a team from my previous company. So we were working in my previous company, and then 3 of us from my previous business basically decided to start Ori. So that was the beginning of it. So with 3 people, and we set out to start raising, it was our seed round, in order to scale the team. So I basically, as you do, you start talking to the different VCs in the UK, and then we met Episode 1 Ventures. They were the first VC that invested in us. I got along really well with Paul. I still do. He's on our board and he's a really good friend. But Paul used to work in Cisco in the old days. He was an executive in Cisco. So when I was talking to him about the problem and how we're trying to solve it and the technology, it kind of resonated with things that he used to experience in Cisco. So he saw a big value in what we're doing. So they led our seed round. And basically that was the beginning. So we raised money from there and started scaling the team. For a long period of time, the team was very much technical, as you can imagine. So engineering was a big part of what we do. It still is. I mean, we're an engineering-driven business.
Yeah.
But it took time to build the engineering team, to find the right people as well. I would say, and I hate this term, but a lot of people put us under the banner of deep tech. And I don't agree with this term because I don't understand what deep tech is.
Me neither.
It was only tech.
Yeah. It sounds deep.
Yeah. But building a technology-driven business, I would say, especially in the UK, in Europe, it's not. It was a bit challenging to find the talent. A lot of the talent in our industry was not in the UK, was not even in Europe as well. So that was quite challenging to find the right people and actually find the right team that could work together and build this.
It's an interesting tangent if you can go there for a second. So where was the talent in Europe, or where is the talent in engineering? When you look at the world map, what do you see?
Yes. So most of the talent if you're talking about technical infrastructure solutions, US has more talent than here. That's changing, I would say, and there's more and more people now in our space. But the access to talent, especially if you're early stage, you'll have the really senior engineers, the really senior technical leads, probably in the UK or different places in Europe. But as early stage, to basically have access to certain talent that you'll be able to onboard from day one, you'll find more in the US space, I would say.
Got it. So yeah, but back to you got the funding. You have a core team. You're an engineering focused company, which is not aptly described as deep tech. So how do you go about finding customers? Because that seems to be the biggest bottleneck for a lot of businesses once you get investment. And let me tell a quick short story of mine before you answer that question. I don't usually jump in, but I think this is very relevant here. This was before the pandemic. I was in an event in central London, lots of founders, and I met this guy, and we were talking about the startup, what he was doing, what I was doing, etc. He told, our office is upstairs. I asked, how many people are you? He said, we are 15 people. How many years have you been working for? Yes, a startup for that's 2-year-old. And then I asked, okay, do you have any customers? They say, no, we haven't launched yet. And then, okay, I understand the idea of growth before profitability. On theory, it makes sense, but sometimes people take it to such an extreme, I think. So, and the perspective the world has had on that has kind of shifted after the WeWork stuff and other things coming to a bitter end, perhaps. Yeah. So in your case, how did that story go?
So, we spent a long time on the technology, figuring out how it works, because we simplify it for the customers now, but it's a very, very, very difficult problem to solve and put together. And spending time on finding the right people that can solve this problem for us, and at the same time building the solution, and finding a customer that will find value in it took a long time, I would say. We had a lot of ups and downs in the business. And also we used to think our customers at the beginning were in the telco network space. So we were working a lot with a variety of different telco providers, your mobile operators and so forth. And then eventually we realized that it's not. Because what we were trying to do is we were trying to sell to the enterprises through the telcos. Because the telcos sell infrastructure like networking infrastructure and so forth to the enterprises, and we thought that is a good channel for us, and that's a way we can basically build our solution. But that didn't work out, and we had to change quickly. We had to change even how our platform works. We had to change how some of the architecture works as well, in order to go directly to enterprises. And then to go to enterprises, we had to find the right channels. It's very difficult to sell to a large bank.
It's difficult to get the conversations started. I've been there. I had a B2B solution in the video learning space, and even if you have a product that they would fall in love with, still it takes a year and a half, and then so both in terms of the time duration, the urgency, and finding the right people and getting them interested in the conversation is by itself a huge ask, in my opinion.
Of course, and there are times where you go through, like any other startup, you go through phases where you can't see where this is going. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, as they say, as cheesy as that sounds, right? But
Yeah.
then just keep at it, and then trying different aspects, and eventually things align. And this year we are in that stage where we have a healthy pipeline with customers. We have a solid product. We have a very solid team that is basically delivering on this product and so forth. It takes time.
Amazing. So what was the first big win for the business that you kind of celebrated internally?
So to be honest with you, the first contract we won was about £1 million, and that was one contract, one customer.
Yeah, so that's cause for a celebration.
Yeah, exactly, and that was quite a good achievement, I would say. I mean, the team did fantastically to get us there.
The dopamines and the endorphins, yeah, I can imagine after hearing the good news.
Absolutely, and this kind of proved the market we're in, because it's a huge market. You're not talking about a SaaS, and I like a SaaS solution where you basically need thousands of customers to actually compound and create revenues. It's a big market, and if we do this well, and if we continue growing this way and working through the right channels, it's a big multi-billion-dollar business and a multi-billion-dollar market. And that's what really excites me about this.
It is incredible. I'm excited for you hearing this story, because that's kind of the entrepreneurship bug, right? Getting excited about this and really maybe risking a lot of things just for the shot of building a big company.
Absolutely, yeah. And I like the enterprise space because you can I like big contracts.
So let me ask you, do you think, I think what you just said kind of ties neatly into my next question here, how entrepreneurship is perceived in the UK versus, let's say, in the US? Maybe the other way to ask this question is, what do you like and what do you not like about the British startup ecosystem?
So I think I like London. I love London. I love living in London. I don't think I'll move anywhere else, even though as a startup, especially as an entrepreneur, most people, they start in London, they raise a bit of money and they move to the US. And I never thought about doing that. And I never thought of actually wanting to do that, because I think there's a lot of value you get here as well. And also there's a lot of value you get from a place where you think differently and you act differently and you do things differently as well. And I see that not as a negative, I see it as a positive of being in a place where it's growing. And I would say a lot has changed throughout the years as well. Like there is hundreds of, if not thousands, I would say, of startups in London now. And if you look at, especially in Europe, I mean, London is the place to be to build a startup.
Yeah.
The infrastructure here is fantastic, even better than in places in the US, from technical infrastructure all the way down to how you register a company, build a company, and all of this. It's so easy. It's so simple to do that. Banking system makes it really easy for you to actually build a company here. So I'd say there's all the components to actually build a company in this place. And I mean, I owe a lot of what I've built in general to London and being in London. So I have a lot of positive feelings towards being in London and London in general.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, there are certain challenges, like I mentioned earlier, with the type of company you're building and the industry you're in. So London is well known for service-driven businesses, for fintechs, for SaaS type of companies and so forth. And there's a lot of those, and there's a lot of big successful ones that came out of London, as you know. Yeah. But for technology-driven businesses, or I don't want to use the word, but deep tech, that was challenging, I would say. From finding the talent, but also talking to the right investors, because a lot of investors in the ecosystem in London are very much used to the fintechs, the SaaS models, and so forth. So they can basically place you, they can put you in their Excel sheet and basically do their calculations and so forth. Mm-hmm. But when you're starting with a technology-driven business and you're building something based on tech first, as in, look, there's a problem in how we do things in applications, and we're going to solve it by doing 1, 2, 3. That was quite challenging to get the message across to some investors and to actually get them to understand the value of what we're building and where this could be, where this could get to, basically. And I would say that's one of the weakest points of being in London is if you're actually building a technology-driven business, it's a challenge, and it still is even to this day, and more so in Europe. I would say Europe is even worse than
It is. It is. London is kind of a gateway. It feels almost like a arithmetic average over the US and the EU.
Yeah, and if you look at this, like the number of startups that are in our space, there are very few here. I can count them maybe on one hand that are in London that are building technologies that are like in our space, but there are hundreds in the US that do that, and all of the big startups that came before us that built cloud technology businesses, I don't know, like HashiCorp and others, they all came from the US basically.
Yeah. This is the reason why we have built startups of London. Basically, I think the startup ecosystem in London should be 10x its current size now. I think it can be.
I agree. And I think all the components, and like I said, the infrastructure needed to build a company here is very good. It's very easy,
It is. It's incredibly easy to get a company started. It's easy to communicate. It's easy to transport. You can get the finance and insurance and other stuff done. The tax system is quite easy compared to a lot of places. Sometimes people like to complain about it, but I know they haven't seen the worst of it. So it is actually really good. But once you've done all that, you have a company registered, you have a semi-flexible team and so on. It is really tough to sell in this market, in my experience. Mm-hmm. Not just to sell products, but also kind of a selling to the investor, right? Selling the idea, making them excited, especially if you are kind of trying to push the envelope a bit, pushing the boundaries, taking more risks, coming up with a perhaps non-traditional business model. And when I say traditional, I'm not talking about a bakery, but as you just said, like a SaaS and fintech, now it's been traditional because it's been going on for 10 years, right? But if you're really trying to push the boundaries and doing something really incredible, high risk, high reward, now people tend to approach that with a sense of skepticism that I think is beyond the boundaries of a healthy skepticism. That's kind of my take on this.
I think also, I mean, this is due to, if you compare with VCs, particularly in the US, a lot of them came from an operator background. So they were either in a startup or they were in a large company operating something, especially if they're technology-driven investors. So they understand, they have engineering backgrounds. They were an engineer at one point, so they kind of understand the technical problem that you are actually solving. If you think about the majority, I'm not saying all of them, because I've met some fantastic VCs here, and we do have some fantastic investors with us as well who fully understand what we're doing and supporting it. But the majority of investors in the UK, they come from either private equity, investment banking backgrounds, and that's why there's a big drive towards fintech, I would say, or financial.
Exactly. A better understanding of money rather than technology is kind of describes the situation. So Mahdi, if I might ask you, so do you think you as an entrepreneur, because you said it's been 15 years, right? It's a long time. Do you still feel like you're growing as an entrepreneur? You're becoming better every year?
Oh, yeah, of course. Every day. Every day you get better, I would say.
So like, tell us, future, let's excite future entrepreneurs. In what way, in which qualities do you think you are becoming better and growing as a direct result of being working as an entrepreneur, as opposed to, let's say, working in a large corporate setting?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to define it, I would say, but it's I think you become better at viewing situations and understanding how to look at data in order to make a decision. So sometimes I look back 2-3 years ago even, and 2-3 years ago I thought, oh, I know a lot. And then I'm like, how did I make that decision? Because I have more understanding data now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something that compounds over time. And sometimes you do it deliberately, sometimes you don't do it deliberately, but because you're exposing yourself to many types of situations as an entrepreneur, especially if you're starting, and you're forcing yourself to be in so many situations that are completely uncomfortable for you, but then you just have to go through them. That teaches you a lot without you knowing. and it compounds over time. The more you expose yourself to uncomfortable situations, the more you realize that you're getting better at things. You're getting better at making decisions. You're getting better at noticing patterns, therefore allow you to make better decisions. You're getting better at even talking to people. How you say things, how you mention things, how you explain things becomes better and better over time, I would say. And therefore it makes you a better person on the first level, but also makes you a better operator and a better leader, I would say.
It does. I mean, in my experience, I just would like to echo what you said. It makes you super like you almost become like a machine with superhuman powers.
Yeah.
When it comes to making decisions compared to the average, let's say, because you make so many decisions throughout the day. Some of them are small, some of them are decisions that you make once a month, and some of them are decisions that you make once a quarter. And you learn to approach those questions and those decisions differently, right? You have the habits. So you think, you take your time, you consult people, and you have a better understanding. I think this is the best thing about being an entrepreneur. You understand how little you know, but you also understand how to acquire that new bit of knowledge before you make the decision. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about being like an entrepreneur, as a business operator. You just become better as a person, I would say, if you, in everything you do.
Yeah. Because it's just, in a way, it is such a good feedback loop that you either get good or you don't survive. Whereas in a corporate setting, it's perhaps a different dimension. So how many people are you as a total team right now?
At the moment, we're about 30 people.
30 people. So that's quite sizable. Are you looking to make any new hires?
We are.
What roles are you looking for?
Yeah, we are. We're always recruiting engineers. So there's always a space for a good engineer with us. But as we literally started going to market properly this year. So we're growing the sales team, we're growing marketing. So I'm hiring like senior marketing people. So we're starting to grow the go-to-market machine at the moment. So a lot of the hires that we are making and we're going to be making in the next 12 months are in that space, basically.
Amazing. So for people to reach out to you, it is ori.co, ORI.co. And it's been wonderful having you. An insightful chat. I had a blast. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you.